daddy passed away. She never responded. And I said to my sister, who still talks to my mom, like, why did mom never send any pictures? She goes, well, I asked mom about it, and she said, well, I'm dying too. That was her response to like me saying my dad died. Well, I'm dying too. Like, it's a competition, or like, it's just, it doesn't even make sense. But
it just had to make it about her, right?
Had to make it about her.
And I think, though, and you've mentioned this to me before, and I think this can be helpful too, but it's when you look at them as if they just can't help themselves for whatever disordered reason it is. Mm-hmm. And to be very clear, it does not excuse any of the BS and all of the harmful things they've done. And I'm not even saying it makes it so that you would forgive or something, but I do find it helpful, like you've said, to say, you know what? They are just this disordered kind of person. They can't help it. And it's helped me to let go of resentment when I'm
right. It's like it's like asking somebody with no arms to give you a hug and then getting mad at them when they don't hug you. They've got no arms. They can't hug you with no arms. And that's what it was like with my mom. She's got no ability to love me. So I can ask her all I want, but she's got no arms, So it doesn't erase what she did or didn't do or anything else. But it allows me to not take it personally. And that's the thing. Like, that's the healing part for me, is to say to myself, okay, she didn't love me, right? And I used to always say, if my own mother can't love me, nobody will, or nobody can. How can anybody love somebody that's so unlovable that their mother doesn't even love them? And I lived like that, and I treated myself like that. Like, I felt unlovable, and so I tried to find my validation in men after, relationships or whatever, like just trying to get like a feeling of being lovable. And, once I realized that, it wasn't me, like, she would love my sisters. She would hug my sisters. She would nurture my sisters, but not me. And that's like, okay, so it's not like, okay, she's completely incapable, right? But she was incapable for me because I was born at a time when she was a teenager. She was not married. It was the 60s. They were in Bible college. Like, it was a bad scene. Her parents were Baptist missionaries. Like, so like, this was the shame and humiliation and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't produce the result she wanted, which was to keep my dad.
So she resented you. She resented you.
She hated me. And she told me she hated me. And she wished I was never born. I ruined her life, all that kind of stuff. So why was she able to love my sisters? Because they were wanted children, and they were born maybe when she was a decade older and more mature and had been married and whatever. So they were born under different circumstances. So she was able to bond and love them. But because of the circumstances in which I was born, she was not able to bond with or love me. And that does not mean that I'm unlovable.
Absolutely. And this is the roles of the narcissistic family, where they say they have golden children, the black sheep child. And when you spoke up about what happened to you, it just like cemented your black sheep up. See, this is why I hate her. This is why I resent her existence. And just total self-centeredness on her part.
But this is the craziest part, right? I was a black sheep of the family because, I was a drug addict. I was this, I was that, blah, 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 blah. But then when I got healthy and I got clean and I stopped doing drugs and alcohol and I was doing EFT and working on myself and becoming a success and all that, then I was too good. You think you're too good for everybody. Then I was the white sheep of the family. You know what I mean? Oh, you just think you're better than us. So there was no way of winning her over. There was no place or thing that I could do or say or be or accomplish that was ever going to achieve her loving me. And that is where I needed to get to that understanding of there is nothing I can do that is going to make her love me. And that doesn't mean I'm not lovable. That anybody with the capacity for love can love me. She just does not have that.
And that's the most important lesson to pull from that too, is what you just said. Just because your mother didn't love you doesn't mean you're not unlovable. But I can clearly see how that can imprint such a terrible message on a child when their own mother, the one person that you would think would love you unconditionally or the
Right.
closest to that, is saying all of those things to you. It's just a terrible programming to give a kid.
It's very like to have any kind of self-esteem or self-worth when you're sitting there in the corner like some monstrous freak while she's on the other side of the room rocking my little sister singing "You Are My Sunshine." You know what I mean? And just the contrast of that and trying to not take that personally, like it took me a long time to, and like working on myself and doing the EFT and other therapies to understand that her shit is not my shit. That's her shit. And I lived a lot of my life like owning her shit, like her thoughts about me, like living up to her low expectations of me.
Right. I mean, and a lot of people wouldn't even believe this unless they heard it. Like they wouldn't believe a mother would do that, where completely see someone completely differently than the other kids, like the
Right.
sisters that she loved versus how she treated you. But it absolutely happens, and
It does.
it's more common than people would think, more than likely.
And I've developed this theory, Jared, that when people come together, they revert or devolve or whatever you want to call it to the person that they were when they met you. So for instance, my dad had my sister and I. My dad was a teenager. He had my me and my sister, and then left my mom, and then he moved away and had a new family. And he was this great dad to the new family. He was present. He did all this stuff. He was like the coach of their teams or whatever. They got the dad that we didn't get, right? But every time that I would see him, that I would visit him, he would revert, like he was Jack 3.0 for them, but he was Jack like 1.5 when he met me. And every time we would come together, he would revert to that Jack 1.5 that wasn't capable of having the conversations or the connections that he was with the other kids. Like that's how I started to develop this understanding that like if we don't work on that, like as people, like individually and together, we never grow beyond the initial like relationship that we had. So every time I would see him, he would say, "I'm sorry, I'm such a shitty father. I'm sorry, I didn't do better." I'm like, and one day I just like, took his face in my hands. I'm like, "Dad, I'm right here, right now. Like this is as an adult with grandchildren and everything. I'm right here, right now. Like I don't care what you did in the past. I don't care what kind of dad you were. Just love me now. Love me now. Be my dad now." And he couldn't do it.
And even you looking at it like that is a favor for him too, that you're even willing to give him that shot. And I don't even think he recognized it. It sounds like he had his own shit.
He was in his own self-loathing, self-misery, self-whatever because of his childhood abuse that he could never face, and he just drank away, and he could never get beyond it. He just could never get
courage, though. These people just don't have courage. Like, and maybe it's because
not. I mean, like I loved him, but I pitied him. I didn't respect him. I couldn't have any respect for him
because it's not behaviors worthy of respect. Those behaviors don't deserve respect.
I felt sorry for him. So I like my sister. She's super angry with him. I don't feel angry. I felt pity. I felt sorry for him because I knew how painful it was to experience like childhood abuse, and the fact that he could just never move past it, do the work to like work through it. Like he just couldn't. He just didn't have what it took to face it. And he got kind of led around by the nose by anybody who had a little more strength or like strength of character than he did.
I know the type. That the women take charge.
Like weak.